All right.
Preparing
Well,
to live stream. Hold on.
false
Got this
start.
little window, this little thermometer. Setting up your meeting. That's where it's okay.
Right
Now I've
on.
got the live meeting
False
is now
start.
live. Ben, please take it away.
Finally live. Well, hello and thank you for tuning in. This is the third installment of Virtual Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I am the Director of Development for Ridge, which is Royal Innovation Design Group, a group of innovation consultants based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage everybody out there to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to like and share our content on Facebook if you like what you see. Virtual Coffee with Ben focuses on how companies innovate, strategically plan for the future, and how we create strong cultures for employees. Joining me today, as she has before, is Michelle Royal. Michelle is the founder and chief innovation officer for Ridge. And we also have Joran Oppelt. Joran is the director of creativity and innovation for Ridge. How are you guys doing this morning?
Awesome.
Doing great. Awesome. Well, in the past few weeks, we've had the opportunity to talk about how business leaders are adjusting in light of the pandemic, and also a little bit about how the local business community here in the greater Tampa area is poised to rebound once the economy opens back up. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about how leaders can continue to inspire their teams throughout all of this change. Now, Michelle, I'd like to start with you. Business leaders are dealing with so much right now. They got a lot on their plate. A lot of them are really just trying to keep their heads above water. I'm curious, how big of a priority should it be for these leaders to continue to try to inspire their employees, to maximize their innovation potential, get them creating, considering all the emotional toll that this has taken on everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you, Ben. The clients that we work with are managing so much change right now that we've had lots of conversations about the change fatigue, the decision fatigue, the communication fatigue that everyone is dealing with. And even the businesses that have been sustaining because recurring revenue business models are dealing with the uncertainty of what it's going to be like Q3 and Q4. That's really, and they're not even able to think about Q3, Q4. Even the most solid businesses right now are still looking at the next 30 to 60 days because they need to make decisions for the best work environment for their employees. And safety and security are still really top concerns. Some businesses that have either private equity or funding, some businesses that, as I said, have the recurring revenue, they're really looking at that scaled long-term, bringing the employees back. And if they are able to forecast financially what the potential implications overall can be on their business, they're all still uncertain as to what the full impact or what the full I think scope of decisions are going to have to be. So really, people are eager to get back to work. And I think, we've even experienced it in Ridge. People want to be working. They want the not only economic impact and fulfillment of doing a good job or doing the work that they're hired to do. They also want the work because it is fulfilling. And a lot of companies, if you want to know how to inspire your team, keep true to the vision of why the business exists in the first place, who it is serving and how you can best serve it. And then over communicate with the team on the role that they play to make that vision and that purpose and those client fulfillment experiences possible. And it takes work. It's a very different kind of inspiration when you're in growth mode and you're growing faster than you know what to do with, than whenever you are having to take into consideration all of the moving parts to keep a safe work environment or a safe service experience for everybody involved. And what I mean by it's different, there's a lot of talk about empathy, and empathy sometimes is confused. Sympathy is I feel sorry for you. Empathy is I feel with you, which means I put myself in your shoes. I'm speaking in a language you can understand. I am speaking with an emotion that is aligned with and validating the way you are feeling. And I'm also providing direction that allows all of us to move through this effectively. And the direction that all of us need to move through this effectively is day by day, step by step, acknowledging small wins, and then overcoming challenges together. And so it's different because we're not trying to moonshot anybody. We're trying to essentially survive on an island together, which is just a very different experience. A lot of daily motivation, a lot of acknowledging the good work that's being done, and frankly, a lot of honesty and openness about the experience that leaders themselves are having. And so feeling with the employees and validating what it is that they're going through is really important.
That's excellent. I'd like to bring Joran into the discussion as well. For those that are just joining us, this is Virtual Coffee with Ben. If you get a chance, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like and share on the Facebook content. My name is Ben Blackman. I'm the Director of Development for Ridge. I'm with Michelle Royal, our Founder and Chief Innovation Officer, and Joran Oppelt, the Director of Creativity and Innovation. Now, Joran, in your role, you're constantly working with teams to unlock their innovation potential. How does your approach change when you're working with people that are dealing with such high levels of stress and anxiety as everybody is right now?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So first, I want to tell people that Michelle and I have been working on this amazing thing called The 7 Truths in the Age of Uncertainty. And it's a series of videos and an ebook that's going to be available on our site very soon. One of those episodes is up on the YouTube channel now, and I encourage anyone who is managing or leading a team and is experiencing that crisis and that level of shookness, right? That level of not knowing what's going to come around the next horizon, to seek that content out and subscribe and stay tuned as more of those chapters are released, because that, I think, is a piece of content that directly addresses this question. What I would add is that, we talk a little bit about fight or flight mode, and we talk about slipping back down the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when you're in that mode of survival, which is kind of the base of the pyramid, you get these horse blinders on, and your field of vision really narrows, and you're not making decisions in a holistic or integral or systemic way in those moments. And I think what we do is we try to maintain that holistic or integral or broader approach for people, and take into account not only the different personality types. At Ridge we use the DISC personality styles and assessments, and so taking into account that not everybody on the team is going to communicate the same way. They're not going to value human relationships, in the same way that other team members will. Not everybody will lead or follow in the same ways, and that is affected whether they're at the work environment that they're familiar with, or now they've been thrust into a home environment surrounded by family, and now they're in unfamiliar territory, and now they're dealing with all these other conditions and stressors, right? Everyone is a unique individual and is going to value different things. They're going to believe different things. They're going to want to, they're dreaming different things. They think they're building different things sometimes. So taking that kind of holistic approach to the team and understanding that you sometimes have to talk to individuals differently in order to get them around the campfire, in order to again tell the same story to one another, is one thing that I think is central to our approach,
Mhm.
which I think is what you're asking about. And then the second thing would be like we, I want to say rarely. Michelle may have a different opinion about this, but I rarely come into the picture when a client is like right in the middle of like what we call the storming phase. Like there is this cycle, this life cycle of teams, and it starts with forming, where you get a team together, and then you get into storming, and you start questioning who's leading, and you start questioning why you're even on the team in the first place, or is the team, or the purpose of the team or the committee even doing any good? Um, and then you get into norming, and you realize you have the tools in your hand, and then you get into performing, which is then when you start using the tools. And then there's this final phase called mourning, or looking back and taking some inventory, and checking in before you join another team, a separate team, or start a new project with the same team. But that second stage is a doozy. That storming phase is when everybody starts nipping at each other and asking these questions about the validity of the approach and the process and the leadership. And you lose people and you gain new people. And when the team gets into norming, then all of a sudden they slip back into storming.
Mhm.
So what you're talking about is this kind of business-wide storming phase where nobody knows what the hell is going on. And I always say the antidote to storming is over communication all the time. So not only do you have this kind of multidisciplinary, cross interdepartmental approach to communication, but you have an overuse of it, right? Because what they're in is the storming phase, and you got to get them into norming, realizing they have the tools. And that's where what you said, like the power of human potential, that's a tool, right? I mean, that's a belief and an attitude in addition to the things that they're building and the way they're behaving and the way they're bonding with one another. All of those things are tools that we hope to show them they already have. It's like the ruby red slippers, like just click your heels.
No place like home.
There's no
That's right.
there's
Oh, you
no
talked
place
about
like your work.
you talked a little bit about over communicating. We've had some discussions with some local CEOs and business leaders recently, and one of the main topics that they're focused on right now is how do they ease back into a physical work environment. Now, there's a difference between when the government says that businesses can actually open and when these businesses actually will open and have their employees mandated to come back on site. We've talked to some leaders that have discussed doing a phased approach where maybe they bring in certain teams one week and then other teams the next week and slowly start to kind of try and get back to normal. I'm curious what your thoughts are, both of you. Do you see any issues with that in terms of having some employees that are maybe really gung-ho, ready to get back to work in the physical environment, and then other employees that maybe are a little bit more reluctant? Maybe they have health concerns, maybe they're just not quite ready to jump back in. If you have those different factions within a team, is that something that just the empathetic communication can handle, or are there other things that the leaders are going to have to think about to handle that type of situation?
Yeah, well, every leader needs to have a strong HR, human resources practice, because that at the end of the day, when you're talking about health issues, health concerns, safe work environment, you need to have strong HR practices. And just like we have, you need to be able to ensure that legally you're doing everything correctly, because, and we're not attorneys. The CARES Act did enforce or recommend or make new requirements around safe work environments moving into this pandemic process where businesses needed mandatory work from home practices. So there's that whole experience. There's individuals. So I've been reading and studying and also hearing from my executive peers as well as our clients. There's a lot of responses to even the work from home process where some people enjoy it. For some people, it's really difficult. For some people, it's a mixed bag. So there's just the work experience. Some companies are going to stay virtual indefinitely because of the reduced overhead of the office space, et cetera. And so it just came at a time where they realized that their teams could be just as productive virtually as they could in an office, and they don't need the office space, and they had a lease up. And so now they're no longer going to be taking on the overhead of the office space. This is going to dramatically change all different kinds of markets. We have so many, you talk about the butterfly effect. When a butterfly flaps its wings, it can start a hurricane across the world over time. Well, this is like the hurricane effect. There's so much swirling and twirling, so much is going to change. It's going to take 18 months to really settle in what the full changes are going to be. But to answer your question about concerns, definitely consult a really strong employment attorney who, and also your HR director or your operations director, to make sure that you are putting forward the scaled approach that makes the most sense for your business and for your services. And then when it comes to the communication with the team, we have a core value called the zone of certainty. So even in this scaled approach of bringing teams back, or allowing some team members to stay at home, or having this rotating process, the zone of certainty is all about whomever is doing the work is extremely clear about what the work is to be accomplished, what was accomplished, what needs to be done next. So when we talk about the difference between a vision where you're reaching out a year to 3 years, sometimes even 5 years out, to the focus needing to be the next 30 to 60 days, and you're looking at communication multiple times a day throughout the day, you may be looking at the next week, having that zone of certainty so that the work effort of these different teams can be ultra clear about what they need to accomplish, the contribution that they're making to the success of the company today, in the next 4 hours, in the next 8 hours. That's where it's a shift in communication and in clarity, and also in metrics. Being able to measure small so that you can maintain movement over time, big movement over time. And so these teams have to be able to have the communication structures and the measurement structures to be able to basically get the work done, because you don't want the work to be just communication all the time, to be able to have time to get the work done in a focused manner, and then communicate the next steps to the next team for what needs to be accomplished. And that zone of certainty, I'll let Joran talk a little bit more about the zone of certainty. That zone of certainty is critical. We call it ZOC. And our ZOC has changed. It changed from pod-like communication to whole company communication, daily, multiple times a day, to make sure that everyone was crystal clear about what they could, what work they could accomplish, and then the contribution that was making to the overall success of the company. Joran?
Yeah, I think in addition to the ZOC, and I can go into that a little bit, but Ben, you asked, how do you re-enter, right? How do you re-enter the atmosphere? And I think there are people who haven't even left the atmosphere yet. And I would encourage anyone who has maybe taken this lightly or been slightly affected by this, who hasn't had to close their business and send everyone home, right, to act as if they had. Because I think that's the risk, is that I think what you're going to see is the people who have to re-enter and figure this stuff out and ask the bigger questions are going to be more adaptable and more flexible moving forward. Like, there's this article, I think it was in Forbes, about people pulling these super long work days, like 12-hour days, thinking, oh, working from home is going to be a breeze. And then they get home and it's like, oh, I'm working for 12 hours instead of 9 hours. This is crazy. And they're getting drained. They're experiencing all this churn and fatigue and burnout. We've got to be aware as like leaders of companies that just because your people are working 12-hour days doesn't mean they're thriving. And even if they're thriving working at home, it doesn't mean they're enjoying it, right? Like, doesn't mean that they're really lighting that fire and still passionate about the work. So I think, we talked about in the early days of when we were turning our team into a remote team, we kind of had this acknowledgement around the fact that there are going to be these new rock stars in the company, like the quiet guy in the corner who, stuck in a cubicle, didn't function very well. But if you send him home and allow him to work from home and allow him to walk around the block every 90 minutes or whatever, he's going to become this amazing producer, right? And vice versa. There are people who are going to be really thriving in that social environment. You send them home and they're going to just be frozen. They're paralyzed. They don't have any idea what to do. So I think as leaders of business, we got to be aware of those structures in the business and continue to ask the questions like, how can this make us better? And constantly, like Michelle was saying, like, be aware of the metrics and be aware of the communication and always be checking in and seeing what's working. And just, like I said, act as if the whole thing needs to be rethought, because that's the idea, is rethink everything about your business, because if this didn't make you do it, something else down the road is going to make you do it, so you might as well do it now. As far as zone of certainty, I mean, yeah, it is a real thing. It's a scalable thing. It's accomplished through painting done for one another, and that's a tool we get from Brene Brown. You got to know, when you say have those reports on my desk in the morning, do you mean a 3-ring binder? Do you mean it's hole punch? Do you mean it's color, black and white? Are there tabs in the sections? Is the client looking at it or not? Or are you speaking figuratively and you just want me to send you a spreadsheet? Like, you've got to know, you've got to stop. Everyone on a team has to be willing to stop their manager or their leader and say, please paint done for me, because that's how the real work is going to get done. And then, yeah, like Michelle said, in the meetings, we check in. When this week or when today did you feel specifically in the zone of certainty, right? When was your confidence level like, and there are some, again, back to the personality types, some people never feel fully certain. That's their personality type. So some people, it's like a 6 is like really good. That's a huge win. So knowing where that ZOC is for individuals, knowing where it is in the clusters, checking in around it. How are we doing? When were we out of ZOC? What do we do to remedy that? Yeah, it's an important one.
That's great. Well, you talked about lighting fires, and I will say there's no two people, with the exception of maybe Jim Morrison, that can light fires like you guys. So if you want to know more about how to inspire your teams, get the most innovation out of them, if you want to learn more about the zone of certainty and all of our other philosophies and methods, please visit us at www.ridge.com. That's RIDG.com. That's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank you again for joining us. Thanks again to Michelle Royal and Joran Oppelt. We'll be back next week. If you have any suggestions, feel free to reach out. If you'd like to schedule a virtual coffee with Ben, again, go to ridge.com. But we hope everyone's staying safe out there, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.